haven't guessed that. And we have a mission here, right? We have a mission to invite seekers into spiritual community, to connect souls in mystery and wonder, and to ignite compassion into action. That's a wonderful mission. How often do you stop to think about what we're doing here and do you ask yourself, am I feeding the mission of the church with what I'm doing? How does this serve the mission? How are we serving the mission? That's not a quiz. I'm not going to be collecting your answers after this. But if we really are serious about our mission, those are the questions we need to be asking ourselves. How does this serve the mission? Now, there are things that always happen in church that do serve the mission. We have to keep the doors open, we have to keep the lights on, we have to pay our staff, Right, staff? We have to make sure people are safe in the church. Well, how does that serve the mission? Well, it serves the mission because if we can't do any of those things, then we don't have a congregation, we don't have a place to come to, we can't gather safely, and we can't do any of those things in the mission, right? If we don't handle our finances properly and responsibly, then we're not serving the mission. But sometimes some of the things we do, sometimes we can get off track in church. Sometimes we can start to do things and we're not thinking about the mission. And that's when it's really important to ask ourselves, well, how is this serving the mission? We should totally have a church poker society because it would be so much fun. Well, it might be fun. Is that a thing the church should be sponsoring? And how would that feed the mission? And I'm not answering that for you now. But I'm saying that these are the things that come up in church. And every once in a while, it's good to re-examine a mission statement and say, is this still our mission? Is this really what we're here to do? And every once in a while, it's good to examine things we're doing and say, I wonder if we're doing things that are in opposition to the mission. So we're going to take some time this month to delve deeply into the mission here, because it's good to look at that every once in a while and say, what are we doing? So the first part of our mission is about inviting, right? Inviting seekers into spiritual community. Well, what does it mean to invite? How do we do that? And who is a seeker? This is my friend Lynn's house, by the way. This is her kitchen door. Does it look inviting to you? It looks inviting to me. The top of the door is open. She's got a big window here. And you can't see the garden, which was where I was standing when I took the picture, but it's friendly and bright, and if she were standing there, she'd be waving and offering you baked goods. And that's one way we invite people, by being present, by letting people know we're here, by saying, come to church with me, but then what? How were you invited into this church community? If you were a founding member, well, you were here already. You have responsibility for doing the inviting. But how do we let people know that they are welcome here? This is a tight-knit community, which is a great thing, but are we so tight-knit that other people come by and think, that's a private club and I'm not part of it? If being inviting is part of our mission, how are we living that part of our mission? What are the roadblocks? The next part of our mission is connecting souls, connect souls in mystery and wonder. So how do we connect souls in mystery and wonder? How are you connected here? Well, this congregation was founded by a group of people who wanted to study the writings of William Ellery Channing. I mean, right there you're connecting in a very deep way. Channing wasn't really big on mystery and wonder, which is ironic in some ways, right? He was very much a rationalist, wasn't he? Those of you, and many of you know Channing way better than I do because you've been studying Channing. So here's a secret about me. It's not really a secret, but I've been reading up on Channing so that I can catch up with you. In order to go see the Ministerial Fellowship Committee, you have to read one Channing sermon. Can you guess which sermon that is? Which sermon is it? Those of you know. The 1819 Baltimore sermon. That's exactly right. So I had that one, the one that defines Unitarianism. And see, now what I'm doing now, for those of you who are, if you're new, what's she talking about? What's the 1819 Baltimore sermon? Well, that's the sermon in which William Ellery Channing defined what Unitarianism is and claimed it as not a slur, right? And kind of named the Unitarian faith. But how do we connect to mystery and wonder? And how do we connect the people we have invited in as seekers to mystery and wonder? How do we connect with each other? How are we serving that part of the mission? So far, mostly I'm asking questions, right? Did you know that's a big part of my job? Like when people ask me to describe my job badly, I say, well, I go into churches and ask them, so how'd that work out for you? That's a lot of what I do. I ask you questions. I'm not going to tell you how you're doing it. I'm asking you, how are you doing it? How are you connecting people in mystery and wonder? Some of the ways we can do it are by holding classes, by worship, right? You can do it in worship. But is church just 1 hour on Sunday mornings? If that's all church is, then we don't really need our own facility, right? Like we could go meet in a park somewhere, set up a tent. How are we connecting? How would you like to be connected in mystery and wonder? The last part of our mission is igniting compassion, ignite compassion into action. Well, it's ironic that I'm talking about this today and look at all the empty seats around you. Where are so many people this morning? Out raking leaves. So I know that you have some sense of action. You do have a good sense of action. Sometimes do we have a little difficulty here articulating our sense of action? Do we? Do we? Say it out loud. Yes, we do. Sometimes we have a little difficulty articulating our sense of action. But I want to put to you that you have a sense of action. You have compassion and you have passion, compassion, passion with, and passion for also. You work with the Westside Men's Shelter. And you don't just throw money at, you work with, right? There are volunteers who go there. and you have volunteer days and you do things. But how can we build that up? Because it's part of the mission. How can we ignite that passion underneath? And how do we tie all these things together? Because it's part of the mission, right? Mm-hmm. It's part of the mission. Mm-hmm. It is. So we have these three parts, but they're not three separate things. They're related. Like if we were a business, our job wouldn't be to build rubber balls and also aircraft engines and also sell hamburgers, right? Like it might be to make rubber balls and also ping pong balls and also ping pong paddles. Those are related. They're all playing equipment. So these are all related. Inviting, connecting, and igniting. We have an entry point. We have a point in which we all get together and go deeper together. And then we take all that stuff that we've done together, and what do we do with it? We go out into the world. So how are we doing that together? So, this might sound like I'm giving you homework. Well, I kind of am, except for that it's going to be in classwork. So, I want you to take a minute now, and I didn't ask this of Stephen ahead of time, but I'm going to ask Stephen to do this. Maybe could you play something? You can play something you've already played for us, but can you play for like a minute while we think? I'm going to ask you to take a minute to think about the questions I've asked you, and then you're going to have a couple of minutes to talk to each other about what's burning inside of you. That bit of the mission that's burning inside of you, of the questions that I've asked, and I put a lot out there. So I'm going to ask you to marinate on that. So would you play for a minute, please? To stew on that. I'm going to ask you to turn to somebody, and I'm going to give you about 2 minutes, because I don't want you to finish the conversation. We're going to start the conversation now. So I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to talk about what part of the mission and what one of those questions is igniting you. And if you're visiting today and you don't have a thought on the mission, or you don't have a thought on what we're doing here, but you can listen, or maybe you can talk about how you heard about us, or if you do or don't feel invited, because maybe our folks would like to know how welcome you're feeling here. That can be a wake-up call for us too, right? Can it be? Yeah. We can hear that. So I invite you to turn to somebody in the pews right now.
You know, we were hoping you would talk the whole time.
So, you've, I mean, you've been hanging around with your mom at services for a while, I presume. And so you've been to various congregations. Do you have any feelings about how inviting or uninviting, or connecting or unconnecting, or any of that stuff for you?
I mean, I've only been here a handful of Sundays, but I've felt fairly welcome. Like y'all are pretty willing to open up. So there's that.
Yeah.
I don't really have much to say on mission.
Is that your mission?
I'm not going to be here very much, and not for very long.
Yeah. I would guess that for the two of us, she can speak for herself, but I have a guess.
We've talked.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think of the three pieces of the mission, that maybe connect has probably been my thing that I've done the most with, or about, or with respect to. Just as a worship associate, I get up and I try and talk to you, share my thoughts and so on.
I mean, I guess as you know, I did membership for over 5 years here. I just got off of it, so I think as far as inviting, that's certainly something we've been thoughtful of. What?
That was my guess, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I have something to say about each one of these things, but I mean, it's kind of a good question because you want people to join you for. People always say to pay the bills, but of course also because we want to share what we have. But yet, it's hard to invite people, and it's hard once they come to know what would how they would stay. So I guess that's something I used to think about. I try not to think about it anymore. I think that we do, whether you know it or not, we do have kind of discussions about social action and feeling that we don't do it. My personal feeling is that I do a lot on my own in my own life, and I spend my whole week doing stuff for volunteer work, so I'm not as worried about it. But I know people are concerned.
Here, and that is wonderful. And I'm going to invite you to continue this conversation during coffee hour. Let's just go to coffee hour. Yeah, well, we will. In a few minutes. But we have other things to do in the circle.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that.
We have other parts. So I invite you to continue this. So I invite you to recall the two little mice. They had a mission. They had a mission to collect a piece of turquoise. And they accomplished their mission, and in doing so, they spread joy to the monk and changed his whole outlook on life. I encourage you to find the joy in the work of the church and in doing the work of the mission and serving the mission of this church. From the sounds of things, there's much to discuss. You have lots of ideas. I heard lots here. So I encourage you to keep that conversation going. Let us continue to consider the mission, to serve the mission, to find joy in serving the mission. Let us continue to be the church in the world. Namaste.